to Brian in Bolton. Hi, Brian. Good morning.
Hi, Mike. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Burnham.
Hi, good morning, Brian.
I'd like to talk to you about the clean air zone.
Yeah.
And I run my own business in Bolton for 23 years. Currently, I have a van, which I've had for 13 years. I've MOT'd, regular, never have a problem with it. Between work, I also go and collect clothing with a mate of mine, and we fill containers and send them out to Africa.
Yeah.
I do that. I pay for the fuel myself, so I do use my van for other things. If this clean air zone comes in, then I don't want to be purchasing a new vehicle because I'm now on the treadmill towards retirement. So I don't want to put myself in debt. If you bring this in, you will be effectively closing my business down and also affecting where I go and collect this clothing, which does go out into containers to Africa.
So Brian there with no business and no way of doing the good work that he does, Andy.
Well, firstly, brilliant what Brian does. So thank you for that, Brian. And God, I'll be the first person to say, we want you to keep doing what you're doing. So the plan, obviously, was to get funding for you to be able to upgrade the van, not necessarily buy a new one, just get a compliant van. And obviously, we'd secured funding to do that. You say if I bring it in, I just keep having to come back to this, Mike. We're under a legal direction from the government to do it. It's not a kind of unilateral Greater Manchester decision. In fact, Greater Manchester is in a sort of legal straitjacket from the government over this. And I can explain more about that if people want to know more about that. But the point was, we were trying to get funding. Well, we did get funding.
But the funding was never enough, Andy. You knew that from the start.
Well, I said it, Mike, on the programme last year, didn't I? Do you remember? And they refused to fund a hardship fund for us, which was a problem. And I was saying that to you, that it wasn't enough. And we had a clause that we could go back to them if it ran out. So we negotiated a sort of an ability to go back to them. But something changed late last year, which is the vehicle supply market change. So we're publishing new evidence about that today, Mike. And the cost of vans has gone up. Well, varies depending on the type of van, but can be up to 60%. So we see the problem, Brian, and I'm not in any way turning away from that. We need to sort of recognise that, and it's why there's a change been announced today, Mike, in that a recommendation is now going to the Clean Air Committee across Greater Manchester that involves the 10 councils, to say that the second stage of this, the money that would have gone to Brian and people like Brian, almost £100 million has been set aside to support people like Brian to change their vehicles, to upgrade the vehicles. That is being put on hold because as things stand, we don't believe that the market will support people fairly to be able to change their vehicles because of the cost of them and also because of the availability of them. And what the recommendation is to the committee is that we ask the government to, because only the government can do this, we can't, to pause that funding scheme so that there can be a fundamental review of the policy here. Because on the current basis, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't clean up the air because people couldn't find the vans, but also it would cause significant hardship, as Brian is indicating. So that's where we find ourselves today, Mike. We've made progress since where we were last week, but I appreciate it's not a final answer for people, but that's because we can't do it. We have to have the permission from the government to change things. If
you pause the funding, I take it then you're going to actually pause the implementation of that second round, because if the funding's being paused to get that increased, you're going to have to wait for that to happen. So surely you must then proportionately pause the introduction for vans.
Well, it's why we're calling for an urgent review. Government review of the situation, because as I keep saying, only they can change the way in which things here are being done, and so we're hoping even tomorrow, Mike, to begin conversations with a cabinet minister about this to see if we can move it forward for people. I understand the anxiety that it's causing, absolutely, and I've never said anything else. It's why I said to you late last year that I'd commissioned some research on the van market, because I realised things were changing out there and people were finding it more and more difficult. We're publishing that evidence today, Mike, and Brian might be might be interested in it.
I'm going to bring Bodie in a second. Andy, have you got a meeting with the Minister?
Yeah, we're hoping. Obviously, won't give all of the details here, Mike, because obviously some of those details cabinet ministers won't necessarily want broadcasting until it's finalised. But we're hoping to have a cabinet minister in Greater Manchester tomorrow, and obviously we would, myself and Councillor Andrew Weston and the other leaders would want obviously to kind of relay our perspective to them so that we can begin to shape what would be a solution to the situation.
Bodie, good morning. Bodie's in Oldham. Hi, Bodie.
Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Andy. Thank you for having me on. Thank you very much. I'll get straight to the question. I won't mess about. I want to know, I understand the clean air's coming in. I want to know, I'm currently £22,000 in debt on a camper van. I drive a camper van, proper motorhome from factory. 2002, they do not make a retrofit for my engine. They don't make it. So he's my daily driver. I drive to a place of work from Oldham to Stockport, sits there all day. I come home at 6 at night. I work a 12-hour day, 12-hour day.
Very quickly, I'm sorry, Bodie. I'm sorry, mate, because I've got so much to fit in.
Oh, yeah,
what's your question?
Yeah. So it's going to cost me £70 a week to work. I can't claim nothing back. So basically, I can't have a camper van, can I? I can't claim anything back. Or are the government going to say, you pay 22 grand, we'll buy your van off you then. We'll buy your van. Where do I stand?
Andy?
Well, again, it's a fair question, Mike, and I'm glad Bodie has called in, because obviously there'll be others in a similar position. So the answer to your question, Bodie, is that this is part of the review that we're recommending should be asked of the government, because we don't. I know people won't believe this, Mike, when I say it, but I'm going to say it. It was never the aim of this scheme to raise money. It was never intended to be an ongoing revenue raiser. It was not intended to leave people in a position like Bodie's describing, where you can't change the vehicle because there aren't vehicles available, you can't afford one, or it can't be retrofitted, and therefore you're just trapped paying the charge. That was not the intention. The intention is to get people to change vehicles with financial support so that they don't pay any charge. That is the purpose of the scheme, and it will have succeeded when it raises no money. Now, I know people don't. I can understand why people don't sort of trust that statement, but it is a fact, and that is in many ways why we've done what we've done, because we don't want residents, Bodie. Let me just be really clear with you about this. Given all the other pressures on people, we couldn't allow a situation to kind of continue where people had no ability to change their vehicle and were just being hit by a daily charge when they were using it. And that is one of the main reasons, Mike, why myself, the 10 leaders have recommended to the committee, who has to finally decide this, that we need to ask the government for a fundamental review of this.
I've got a WhatsApp here, Andy, that in a way categorises a whole set of questions from various directions for you, but okay. I can condense it into this one question, and it's: has new data been gathered about pollution instead of using out-of-date figures to impose one of the largest clean air zones in the world? And basically I'm getting other stuff that's saying, look, Leeds re-evaluated and found out actually they were cleaner than they thought they were. Is Manchester prepared to try that and check whether things have actually improved anyway, and there's no necessity for this to be brought in?
Of course. So, Mike, compliance is the issue, as I said. That's what this is going towards. The minute we can say that the air is legally compliant across Greater Manchester, that is the moment where we can say, right, it's job done. Not because it's raising money, as I said, it's about achieving safe, clean air. And I need just to remind people, there are 1,200 premature deaths in Greater Manchester every year because the air is polluted and dirty, particularly in certain locations. Now, Mike, can I realistically turn my face away from that? Of course not. And it's actually the law of the land. It's the law of the land that we have to have safe air for people to breathe.
If you say...
to answer the question directly, there are 152 locations in Greater Manchester where emissions are above legal levels. 152. And they are monitored.
Are they still monitored, Andy?
Always, Mike. They are monitored, and obviously you can take a snapshot of one part of the day, and it wouldn't be in breach. You could take it at another. What they do is they take an average, if you like, over a period of time. They are always monitored, Mike, and that is our challenge. We have a situation where traffic cuts through Greater Manchester from all parts of the north, doesn't it? And consequently, we have the air pollution that results from that. So we are always monitoring that. But that's the scale of our problem, Mike. 152 locations where the air is harming people's health. And we can't do nothing about that.
Got a text through from the Facebook group Rethink the Clean Air Zone. There's more than 50,000 members, all vehemently against the CAZ charge. Will you meet with the admin of this group to discuss a way forward?
Yes.
Okay.
So no hesitation. I'm not anticipating that question, but yes, absolutely.
So,
but you know, let's have that discussion, Mike. So I'm in the business of trying to move things forward. But I'm not in the business, obviously, of ignoring the fact that illegally polluted air is causing real harm to people's health. So, in my view, what we've got to do is clean up our air, make it safer for people, but do so in a way that doesn't threaten jobs, businesses, or livelihoods, as I've always said. And that's why myself and the leaders have taken the step that we have this week.
Just a quick one, Andy, by the way, very quickly. I'm going to bring Layla in Stockport in on an issue that's not Clean Air Zone.
Explain it again, Mike, because it's not just a political situation, it's a legal situation. So each of our councils has been given this legal instruction. And if they don't act on it, they are then legally liable for the consequences of failing to act. And in effect, the council taxpayers of Greater Manchester are then exposed to the effects of that legal action. So they can't just ignore it. But as I was saying, it's in effect a legal straitjacket on Greater Manchester. So the government lost a court case. It put the straitjacket, it passed the problem down to the councils and put a straitjacket on them to say, right, you must do this by 2024. And that's the problem. They are in this position where they have to ask for permission for the straitjacket to be refitted or loosened. So they can't act, if you like, unilaterally, Mike, and just say, oh, that's a political situation. We'll just tell the government to do this, that, or the other. That would be to expose the council taxpayers in their area to real risks.
Okay.
And actually, they shouldn't do that, obviously, because of the harmful air that is affecting the health of residents in all of our areas.
0800 2 in the hot seat. Alex in Urmston is with us now. Hi, Alex. Good morning.
Morning, Mike. You well?
I am. Andy's there, Alex, so ask your question.
Okay.
Hi, Alex.
Andy, good morning.
Morning.
Just a quick one on the subject of financial help for vehicle owners.
Yeah.
The average builder's vehicle worth, let's say, about £5,000, and you're offering up to £3,500 help to a new vehicle. But it does have to be a new vehicle that's come from an approved supplier. You can't buy a second-hand Euro 6 compliant van. So with that, the van at £5,000, the grant of £3,500, you've got £8,500. A new van is a minimum of £20,000 plus VAT, so £24,000. It's a shortfall of £15,500. Where's that money coming from? And just on a second point, you state that it isn't a tax, it's a clean air charge. Well, let me give you a definition of a tax. A compulsory contribution to state revenue levied by the government on workers' income and business profits, or added to the cost of some goods, services and transactions.
I'm going to move on now, Alex. Hope you don't mind, so that Andy can answer your question. Andy he's heard your observation on what constitutes a tax. Andy?
Well, yeah, I'll answer both parts, Mike. So on the first part of the question, the situation that Alex described is exactly why myself and the other leaders have asked for this fundamental review. You know, there's £100 million of support sitting there. If we'd have just released that, it'd have gone in paying these inflated prices that Alex is rightly describing. So it wouldn't have gone round, Mike. It wouldn't have got to people because of the cost of the cost of the vehicles. So that's why we've acted. We've listened, Alex, and we've acted. And obviously now we need to kind of conduct this discussion with the government and hopefully get them to review it and then move it to a better place. I mean, just to be honest for a second, I mean, we have secured a significant subsidy for people to modernise their vehicles, and that shouldn't be ignored, because obviously people do need to upgrade vehicles from time to time. So, it's not necessarily all bad. On your point about the tax, again, I'm going to agree with you, not just because I'm trying to find reasons to agree with you, but it's another of the reasons why we've done what we've done. Because what you're rightly saying is, if you can't upgrade, if you can't find a way of making your van compliant, you will just have to pay the fine. And this is the point, Alex. It's a fine, not a tax, if you like, in that you're only charged it if your vehicle's not compliant. So it's like a different type of.
Where does the money go, Andy?
So the money goes to not to me, by the way, Mike. And this is another point that people say, but I have no say over the money. This is a committee of the 10 councils which will decide how the money could be used. And the money, to the extent it raises much, could go into providing more support for people. And I think that probably is the intention, to be honest. But your point, Alex, that if we stay as we are, people are just going to be hit with a fine they can't avoid, in effect a tax. So I buy your analysis. That is actually one of the reasons why we're kind of saying at this point, blowing the whistle here and saying, look, this situation is unsustainable. And the truth of the matter is, Mike will back me up on this, this was growing in the second half of 2021. The pandemic has caused a disruption to the supply chain. So the vans just haven't been coming onto the market. If the prices had been lower, the scheme, we think, would have worked. But with the price inflation that we've seen, obviously the points you're making are valid, and that's why action is being taken on them.
And just on the same subject for a second, but we do have other inquiries that are not clean air zone related. Mark in Cheadle on that subject there said, who tests the air? Because according to the DEFRA website at the moment, the air over Greater Manchester is clean, and compliant.
Well, it's done jointly, Mike. So obviously TFGM have some of the sites, some of the other sites are government sites. So the analysis is done jointly, and I accept the point. I mean, you can take a snapshot at some points and find it's compliant, but the reading has got to be taken over a period of time, because it will vary, won't it, according to the weather and according to the traffic conditions. And that's very clearly laid down, in national standards. This is the law of the land, Mike. We're not making this up just to bring in a scheme. It's the law of the land that we have to have air that is safe to breathe. And sadly, in 152 locations, that isn't the case, according to the government standards about how air quality should be monitored. But to come back to what Alex was saying, it's precisely this was never intended to be a revenue raiser, Mike, where people were just hit with a tax. And because it could become that if people can't change their vehicles, that is why we've intervened. So I hope it is coming over this morning to people that we are listening here and we are trying to act in the best interests of our residents. But the best interest of our residents is twofold, isn't it? Everybody needs cleaner air, everybody. And that involves people who've got worries about their vehicles. Everybody needs cleaner air. That's good for all of us. But at the same time, everyone needs a job, everyone needs their livelihood, and that's the issue we're trying to solve here. If we just scrap the whole thing, we're condemning, obviously, people to respiratory problems and sadly premature deaths going forward, and we can't obviously just do that.
Let's bring Lance in Oldham in with Andy. Hi, Lance. Good morning.
On 16 trucks, and it's impacted us massively because obviously I don't know if you know the value of what one of our trucks are in real life. With a crane, I'm looking at £260,000 per truck. So you look at that, we price that over an 8-year lifespan, with an average truck having a lifespan of 12 years. Now, you brought this funding out, or this scheme out. People bought trucks in 2015 with a financial plan to keep that vehicle on the road for that kind of time. This is forcing people to renew vehicles, which is artificially then impacting on the demand, so the supply chain can't cope. You're talking about helping the vans out, pushing it back for the funding for the vans, giving them an extra year to sort things out,
What about the hauliers? What about the people that were driving the trucks throughout the pandemic, keeping everyone fed, keeping everyone vaccinated? What about us now that are faced with basically a couple of months and then we're thrown in without an opportunity to change things?
Just very quickly, do you mind telling me, Lance, how will this impact in as much as, is it something you can absorb, or would you go bankrupt? Or somewhere in between?
If you look at £60 a truck, running 16 trucks every day in Manchester area, it's £249,000. Now, you're talking about passing that on to customers. Inflation is going through the roof already. If you start having everything put onto the hauliers' additional costs passed on to the end users, it's going to go through the roof.
Andy?
Well, this is obviously a situation that's quite specific, Mike, isn't it? Because of the nature of the vehicles. Am I understanding you, Lance, that there's a crane, are you saying, on the back of them?
On my vehicle specifically, yeah, but on vehicles in general, if you're looking at a standard tractor unit, you're looking at £100,000.
Well, obviously, I mean, the money is going out of the door, Mike. So on HGVs, already a lot of funding has been committed to a lot of businesses in Greater Manchester. So people are using it. And but there are more HGV vehicles around, Lance, aren't there? Because they went Euro 6 in, I think, 2013 or something like that. So there are more vehicles in the market. More of them can be retrofitted. And obviously there is funding for that. Lance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your details, given I think you're in quite a particular situation, and I'm going to ask our team to contact you to see if we can go through the situation and support you in any way. Because obviously you can't necessarily pay that amount of money. No one would want you to. What we want you to do is get to a position where we can help you towards compliance as quickly as possible. So, Mike, I think I'm going to take that situation away, if that's okay, because I think it does need a particular look at from colleagues at the Greater Manchester level.
Lance, if you can do that, thank you for phoning, by the way, Lance. Charlie or Ant will take details from you, and we'll pass those on to Andy. This has just come through on WhatsApp. Can Andy confirm whether or not, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, he has a financial interest in an electric charging points installation company?
No, I don't. No, I have my partner, my wife, did some marketing work for for the company involved, but it was minor. So, but I don't. If people are alluding to a conflict of interest, I declared at a combined authority meeting once, Mike. It was just that. But I have no financial interest in any companies at all. I have no shares in anything. I receive no payments from anybody. But obviously, my wife's work sometimes kind of veers into work that's going on in Greater Manchester, and I would not want anybody to, think that there's any conflict. That's why I declared it.
Okay, Marie in Wigan. Hi, Marie. Good morning.
Yeah, hi. Good morning.
Hi, Marie. Good morning.
Yeah, hi. Good morning. I've got a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Fire away, Marie.
Hi there.
Hi. Good morning. A couple of questions for you, Andy, if you don't mind. I believe that there's been an Air Quality Administration Committee set up for the region.
Yeah.
And that committee is the area of responsibility who are making the decisions as to the range and extent of the zone in Greater Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
But the decisions are also made within that committee about whether the whether the charge is made or not. It's an absolutely local decision as to what that CAZ means and how it works. The second question is, we had a referendum in Wigan some years ago now regarding a congestion zone, which was going to be charged, which got roundly defeated, and it never happened. Can you tell me why there hasn't been any real meaningful and publicised consultation for the public regarding the CAZ? I know there was one, but something like 5,000 people, I believe, out of 2.8 million actually replied to that consultation.
Okay, Marie, we'll get that from Andy now.
Well, so on that second part, Marie, I mean, this predates me, by the way. I'm not trying to avoid responsibility here, but it's been building for a long time because Greater Manchester Councils first got, I think, the direction in 2015 to do something about this when the government lost the court case. So that was ahead of my time. So it's been in the news pretty much on and off since that time. There was a consultation, and I can promise you, Marie, there were billboards around Greater Manchester about it. There were announcements from myself and various council leaders about it, trying to warn people. But the point about, the choice, we've never been given a choice. We have had to do it. But to pick up this earlier part of your question, there is some local discretion, yes, and not backing away from that. And that is decided at the committee that you mentioned. I don't chair it, but I'm a member of that committee.
Well, her point, very quickly, and then you come back to you, is that there was discretion. It could have been done differently. The actual area could have been smaller.
It could, Mike. It could have been done differently. But as I come back to what I said earlier, 152 locations. So the government has said the default is a Category C charging clean air zone. You'd have had to have 150 separate little clean air zones. Now, how on earth would people have understood where they were and where they weren't? You'd have had a kind of a completely unworkable situation, in my view. And consequently, that's why the decision was taken to go broad and then get the support in to help everybody change. Now, that was the decision. And it's the change in the market that has obviously now kind of thrown that logical decision, in my view, because it is logical. It's thrown that into difficulties because of the change in the vehicle market, and that is obviously why the action's been taken as it has. Honestly, I know people will want to say pin it all on Greater Manchester, and there is some responsibility here, Mike. But the legal straitjacket, as I've said a number of times today, is basically fitted by the government.
I'm going to bring
the room for manoeuvre of the Greater Manchester councils is actually quite limited in terms of what they can and can't do.
Okay.
And now, if there's any variation to the scheme, the councils have to ask permission from the government to vary it. So we don't have the room for manoeuvre, I think, that's being suggested.
I will bring in my last caller. I might try and get two in if I can, but just very quickly, on Andy's point there, we've been asking for a minister to come on BBC Radio Manchester every day now for more than a week, for 8 or 9, 10 days. We're always told no one's available. They have finally given us a statement that says air quality is a priority and a public health risk, particularly to the most vulnerable. It says they are investing nearly 170 million across Greater Manchester to help reduce nitrogen dioxide levels. So we did finally get a response from government, although, as you heard then, they still won't put a minister up. But let's bring James...
170, Mike?
Yeah, 170.
Ooh, I don't know. That sounds like they're throwing a bit more in the pot there.
Well, you can check that if you get your meeting today.
Yeah. Tomorrow it will be. But obviously what you've seen there is obviously a statement that's quite similar, if you like, to what we're saying. So genuinely, I think this isn't a matter of party politics as much as some Conservative councillors and MPs would like to make it so. It's got to be resolved jointly, local government and national government together. If we can get a scheme, Mike, that's fair to people, picking up all the points that have been raised on the hot seat today, we get cleaner air and we get a scheme that helps for the businesses of Greater Manchester, if you like, end up with higher value vehicles that are of use to them and actually cost less to maintain and less to run. So it's not necessarily all bad. I think we need to see the benefits here. If I could just say quickly, Mike, phase 1, which deals with buses, HGVs and out-of-town taxis, non-GM registered taxis. I think we should get buses off the roads that are polluting. There's buses on our roads that shouldn't be on our roads. And I think we should be saying to them, no, sorry, we're not going to have your rubbish anymore. We want more modern buses. HGVs, Mike, do come off the motorways and they cut through communities in Greater Manchester. I don't think they should be able just to do that. The Clean Air Zone will deal with some of these things.
All right, Andy, I want to try, if I can,